And so, as far as seeing from Governor Abbott's standpoint, what was he advocating for? And how are you and other people trying to be like, well, we should do this differently and whatnot?
Well, I think that the reality is governor was looking for giving people more choice. I think it's centered around especially kids with special needs that some felt like maybe the public schools could not get, but I was against that to begin with because our public schools do a great job with dealing with kids with special needs. And now maybe there's school districts in some of the metropolitan areas and whatnot, but here in HD7, we do a really good job at that. So that was one of the drivers with me early on about, whether you call it school choice, you call it ESAs, or you call it vouchers. There were just some of the things that were being talked about, the rhetoric that was not, evident in House District 7. And my first responsibility is always going to be the 200,000 people we represent here in HD7. I caution people that I talk to that this is a 2-year budget deal. Anything could change between now. We may not have a budget surplus this upcoming session, so things can change. But the key thing that I try to do, and it's very hard when we're dealing with 4,000 bills, be able to talk to everybody. We do a great job in our office receiving calls, responding to calls, and whatnot. But the reality was school vouchers or school savings accounts, school choice was going to pass, and the big emphasis that I tried to have was, okay, how do we do that yet not hurt our great rural public schools like we have in HD7? And I think that's what we did. We were able to secure $8.5 billion of that surplus in new state money for our rural public schools. And the neat thing is we have more to do. We have, more, things that we can do this next session to continue to improve, the rural public schools with the type funding they need to, represent Texas as the 7th, 8th largest economy in the world. We shouldn't be starving our great rural public schools because we have the finances to do that.
I got to speak to St. Mary's Catholic School, and it seems that in an area where a lot of people were unsure of what's going to happen, they were excited.
I know St. Mary's mission. I am a cradle Catholic. I was born, raised, baptized Catholic, went to an all-Catholic school back in Louisiana, so I understand. St. Mary's is sort of an outlier compared to the other 5, 6, 7 private schools we have. Those schools made it very clear to me that they're private for a reason. They do not want to meet state guidelines, okay? They do not want to meet state guidelines, and so that was some of the things we were able to do in the amendments, which I feel like we were able to really water down the school choice situation, doing some amendments that were really made sense to the people that I was talking to. Like I said, private schools don't want to do STAR tests. They don't want to meet the state regulatory things that they make them do. They made it very clear to me we're a private for a reason. The other thing, if a child leaves a public school to go to a private school, the public school continues to be funded for that child for 2 years. So there was a big worry that, we're going to lose all this funding. No, for at least 2 years, which is the budget cycle that we work within, they still get the same money as if the kid was sitting in a desk. The other thing was, we were trying to make sure that, like a lot of people worried that someone in a private school with this program, school choice program, they could apply for the ESA money. Well, they can apply for it, but there's a lot of guidelines attached with that. So they've got to go through the exact same criteria that a student coming out of a public school would have to get in order to access any of that money. You know, things like what's the family's income levels, you know, what's their grades. I mean, there's a lot of things that they would have to do, which, you know, I've been told that they won't meet a lot of those things. So the big deal is I knew after spending almost 3 years on this issue that we didn't have any private schools here, with the exception of St. Mary's. And, you know, St. Mary's has 75% of their children on scholarship, which means the church is taking money from their weekly basket to put aside for their school. Okay, so wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to take money out of our basket and save the money, you know, by taking a voucher? I mean, I understand that, but the majority, I mean, 99% of the private schools were not going to take the vouchers. So it was pretty realistic to me that in my, again, I represent the people HD7. The schools in HD7 were not going to take the voucher, so it was not going to have the impact on our great rural public schools that other regions would have that may have a much broader, bigger base of private schools.
So a follow-up question on that, even though it's state law, or like it get put in the law on September, so private schools can choose to accept the voucher program or not? Okay.
Absolutely, they can. You know, and I hear more about the homeschoolers, you know, taking some of that money way more than the private schools. So we'll see how that unfolds. There's regulatory things that homeschoolers got to do to be able to access. I think the amount that we're talking for homeschool is like $2,000 a year. So, you know, what we have to do is you know, it's okay to have competition between schools, okay? It makes the schools better. It makes the students better. You know, our objective has to be, you know, we have to improve our scores, whether it's reading, math, science, etc. You know, when you look at things, Texas, compared to the rest of the nation, we fall in the mid to low 30s out of 50 states. That's unacceptable. Texas, we're better than that. So we're going to have to look at different programs to try to upgrade our levels in all of those, you know, scores in particular, to make sure that, you know, what we're spending for public education is really helping the students and the parents of the students as well. The main thing is you know, when you're in Austin, okay, and you're working as a member of 150 members of a body, you know, my objective is to always try to do what I possibly can to enhance the quality of life for the people HD7. And education is very important. And I knew that one of the ways we were going to be able to get, you know, more of the surplus money, new money in the, I mean, teacher raises for the first time in years. Some of the insurance and safety issues and some of the things that we addressed with that $8.5 billion. I mean, we've never spent that kind of money in one session, to my knowledge. In most states, that's bigger than their entire budget. So we've got more work to do, but my goal, my objective is to make sure that our rural public schools, that public education in Texas is second to none. We're Texas, we're the 7th, 8th largest economy in the world. We shouldn't be playing catch up to any other state, and that needs to be, that's my goal, that needs to be our overall